Good morning. I hope you slept well, or were at least able to grab a coffee. I know we're operating on many different time zones. I am still doing that, so please do show some patience towards myself if I don't make any particular sense. I will do my best. Um, so I'd like first to introduce this panel and two of our IAFOR Global Fellows. We have five who are currently with the International Academic Forum, who are conducting their own research, which is in part or fully funded by us, and we're very excited because this is our first year and our first cohort of global fellows. We have been encouraging them to engage across lines of culture, nation, and discipline. And but this first cohort of IAFOR Global Fellows is concentrated in East Asia, and so they're representatives of East Asia. There's five global fellows. They are Hongmin Ahn of South Korea, who's here, and on the far left, Azusa Iwane of Japan, who's not here today, Sheng Xiang Lance Peng of Taiwan, who's not here today, Shuqi Wang of China, who's not here today, but we do have Professor Yanhua Zhou of China, who's here to present with us. So the IAFOR Global Fellows is in many ways a more ambitious extension of what we've wanted to do with scholarships for a time, and we were very happy to be able to receive some donations that allowed us to pursue and build this as a global fellowship. So I expect that we'll, as years go on, to see future cohorts and for these fellows to sort of really start playing a key role in influencing and shaping IAFOR, its program, and also producing original and interesting research that makes us think. So this first cohort was around the theme of independent voices, and this is a familiar theme that you'll hear us talk about again and again and again. The independent voices are also sometimes the marginalized voices. They're frequently the marginalized voices, but these independent voices are what make us as a forum work. So we understand you're going to be from many different countries, backgrounds, disciplines, but also representing different religions, different political parties. But we are a space which is rigorously neutral, and that's not that we don't stand for anything. We do stand for something, but that neutrality is an important preserved space for us to be able to have conversations across those boundaries. Today we've brought the two panelists together, and I'm very happy to be able to chair this panel. And I'd like to acknowledge the work of Apipol Saitong, our academic coordinator, who is there. He can stand up and say hello. He's been coordinating with the fellows. Yes. Very well over the past few months, and has helped to put together this particular panel. So this panel, moving on, is titled "Community Engagement and Education in East Asia: From Preservations of Cultural Heritage to Practices of Contemporary Art." And we place this within a program that crosses those bridges and situates itself within questions of education and at the intersection of questions of education and the arts, which is a highly politicized space, and is one I've found personally fascinating for a long time. Earlier this year, the Japanese ambassador to UNESCO was part of a panel that we hosted in Paris, and that panel put at the center how institutions are responding to some of the international institutions are responding to international crises. And UNESCO has certainly not escaped some of those discussions because, of course, it's engaged around that intersection of arts and culture. So this panel here with these two panelists is going to look at community engagement and educational initiatives in East Asia. And the abstract reads, recent community engagement and educational initiatives in East Asia actively aim to contribute to both the preservation of cultural heritage and the evolution of contemporary pedagogy. This panel engages in global interdisciplinary conversations on education, heritage, and community building, seen in two regional case studies of such initiatives, connecting local practices with broader international trends. In Japan's case, Mr. Hongmin Ahn focuses on the Shikoku Pilgrimage in Japan, demonstrating how regional and national educational programs advance cultural preservation and promote local pride while supporting Japan's UNESCO heritage recognition efforts. Dr. Yanhua Zhou discusses a case study on the Handshake 302 or 302 art collective in Shenzhen, China, where art-geographic explorations serve as a means of engaging with migrant communities, resulting in the shaping of identity through contemporary art education. The panel ultimately calls for a rethinking of how we educate future generations in East Asia through community involvement, offering a timely reflection on the role of community-engaged art and education in addressing global challenges related to cultural preservation and social transformation. So how this panel is going to be structured is I'm going to give each panelist 15 minutes to present their work. After 16 minutes, I will cut them off. So there's a warning. And then that will allow us the time to consider 4 questions. Those 4 questions I will ask after their presentation. That will take between 10 and 15 minutes, and that will leave us 15 minutes for Q&A after. That's my aim, and I ask for my panelist cooperation. Okay, first of all, I'd like to go to Hongmin Ahn of South Korea. He's an incoming student at the Inter-University Center for Japanese Studies in Yokohama, Japan. He holds a Master of Theological Studies in Buddhism from Harvard Divinity School at Harvard University and a Bachelor of Arts in Religion from Bard College, also in the US. As an interdisciplinary scholar, Mr. Ahn's research focuses on modern transnational Buddhism in Korea and Japan, exploring the history, culture, practices, gender dynamics, and institutions such as clerical marriage and the popularization of Buddhism through military chaplaincy. Mr. Ahn.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Hongmin Ahn, a student at Inter-University Center. And the topic that I will present today is about the Shikoku Pilgrimage and its ambivalence in local education. Before I begin my presentation, I have to make a confession of my own. I don't have any training background in education, and all of my training so far, all through the master's degree, has been focused on religious studies. So this is really me coming out of my comfort zone and then making this effort to engage with the field of education. I would like to think that I'm trying to embody the missions of IAFOR by producing this interdisciplinary work. And I'd like to go on how great the IAFOR is, but for the interest of time, I'm going to cut short right here. But it's hard to say that my presentation will be very religion heavy, and I'm going to cite a lot of Japanese religious scholars. So I just wanted to give you a warning of that. So this is the overview of my presentation. I'm going to talk briefly about the just general background of the Shikoku Pilgrimage, followed by the nationalization and secularizations of this pilgrimage. The word nationalization may not come very clear to you right now, but hopefully it will by the end of this talk. And then after that, I will end with its implications in the education field in Shikoku local regions, and the possible discussion that I would like to to put you in for is discussions on how should religious heritage be taught in the classroom setting. Right. So the Shikoku Pilgrimage, you may or may not know about this, but this is one of the most revered the spiritual tradition that encircles Shikoku, Shikoku Island, Japan's fourth largest island there, connecting 88 Buddhist temples across 4 prefectures. It attracts approximately 150,000 pilgrims each year, not just from Japan, but also around the world. As Ian readers noted in his extensive research, while many religious practices have seen like a declined participation in recent years, this is one of the few cases that actually seen a bump in the numbers of participants up until like 2010, although the numbers started to decline again a little bit later. But as my rest of my presentations will demonstrate, this trend perhaps has very little thing to do with the Buddhism itself, and more to do with this culture and the tourism effort that was being put forward by different entities. So, and as reader described in his book, Making Pilgrimage, pilgrims traditionally wear white robes, symbolizing purity and ritual death to earthly desires, along with conical thatch hats and carry walking step called Honjo Sue. This journey typically takes anywhere between 30 to 60 days on foot, though in modern days, many pilgrims take various mode of transportations. And there's really no shames on taking a more convenient way rather than just taking a walk. This pilgrim's attire carries the very deep symbolic meaning. And the white clothing represents what readers and church they collectively call symbolic separation from everyday life. Each item has significance from the white robe representing ritual purity to step described in Namodashi and Jokonzo, and Dogyunin meaning 2 pilgrims working together, symbolizing how each pilgrim travels spiritually accompanied by the Kobo Daishi. And a little bit on him and the next. So actually, okay. The pilgrims, the original origins are deeply connected to the life, the legend and legacy of Kobo Daishi, who is also known as Kukai, who founded the Shingon Buddhist school of Buddhism, which stands as one of the largest Buddhist schools in Japan today. The pilgrims developed gradually through the travels of ascetics from Mountain Koya, who sought outside connected to the tradition's founder. And as documented in the reader's work, Legend, Miracles, and Faith, Kobo Daishi, after Kukai's death, legend transformed him into a popular miracle-working figures in Japanese folk religion, and traveling the countryside. The stories of him like traveling countryside, helping these virtuous and punishing the greedies, they are integrated into the folklore and then contribute to this powerful emergence of the devotional cult that are still there. And according to the Kenji Masuo, by the mid-17th century, a pilgrimage route incorporated these various local temples and mountain religious centers that come into existence. So this is not just the Buddhism, but also there's some elements of the Shintoism incorporated in there as well. And the first pilgrimage guidebooks by the priest named Shinnen, published in 1687, and it's established the standards numbering and the orders of temple that continues today. Okay, and then yes, and then moving on to the cultural significance. The Shikoku Pilgrimage transcends the purely religious boundaries in several ways, as readers and church demonstrate. While rooted in Buddhism, it attracts people of all faith and backgrounds. A unique aspect is the practice of settai, a local offering food, sheltering, or other assistance to pilgrims. Asakawa has shown how this custom reflects deeply how Japanese values of hospitalities and communities while serving as a marker of religious identity. The concepts of Henro Bunka were translated as a pilgrimage culture has become increasingly important in recent years, as readers knows. This term was deliberately chosen by regional authorities to emphasize the culture rather than religious aspects when promoting the pilgrimage for the UNESCO World Heritage the recognition. This strategy reflects both constitutional constraints about the separation of church and state in Japan, and the recognition that cultural heritage may resonate better and more strongly with contemporary Japanese the society. Hoshino and Asakawa described how the pilgrimage served as a unifying force across Shikoku's 4 prefectures, providing a shared cultural heritage that transcends local rivalries. This has become particularly important as the island faces the issue of economic challenges caused by aging and depopulation, which is actually my research will be about, with the pilgrimage increasingly seen as a potential, for lack of better word, tour or regional revitalization. So, all right, I think I pressed the wrong one. All right. So to talk more about it, what other scholars that say about this, the recent studies have collectively revealed a deep connection between the Shikoku pilgrimage and Japanese identity, demonstrating how this practice has become linked with cultural heritage and sense of national belonging rather than religious one. Hoshino identified a move away from traditional religious motivation toward what's called jibun sagashi, self-discovery. This tends to become particularly pronounced from the 1990s and onward, as documented by readers and other scholars as well. Okamoto suggested this represents not so much a secularization of the pilgrimage as an expansion of what can be considered religious practice. He introduces the concepts of pilgrims without faith, arguing that this faith is not essential or prerequisite to pilgrimage in the contemporary the Japan. Similarly, Yamanaka proposed the terms karui shukyo, which is translated as a light or floating religion, to describe how people engage in traditionally religious practices without formal religious affiliation. Collectively, their scholarship points out that Shikoku is not only portrayed as a site of religious pilgrimage, but also, if not more so, on cultural repository where the essence of Japanese identity is preserved and embodied in its richer landscapes and customs. What was equally important was the media's depictions on depiction and their shaping on the modern perceptions of the pilgrimage. Mori Masato analyzes how television programs, particularly NHK, the documentaries that are presenting the pilgrimage as a window into traditional Japanese culture while downplaying explicitly religious aspects. This reflects what readers call a strategic positioning of the pilgrimage to appear to contemporary audience in Japan, and also avoid the religious favoritism. This challenge of furusato, or roughly translated as a homeland in Japanese, features prominently in media representations. Readers show how pilgrimage is often portrayed as a way to encounter the kokoro no furusato, the spiritual homeland, on idealized realms where traditional Japanese values persist unchanged. This portrayal has proven highly effective. Both temperance priests and the pilgrims frequently cite television program as an influencer in their engagement with the pilgrimage. Hoshino and Asakawa notes that how media depiction presents an idealized mythology of the Shikoku as a special place, offering contrast to modern urban Japan. While this may not reflect reality, it still resonates strongly with the contemporary Japanese seeking connection with their the cultural root. So briefly on modern rebranding, recent decades have also seen a conscious effort to rebrand the pilgrimage for a contemporary audience. Readers documents how regional government promoted as a tourist destination and cultural heritage site. The push for the UNESCO World Heritage status analyzed by readers exemplify these new approaches. The campaign deliberately emphasized culture rather than religious aspect, reflecting the legal challenges due to the constitutional mandates of separation of church and state in Japan. This is evident in readers' observation of the December 2007 application for UNESCO World Heritage status, which notably avoided any reference to religious aspects such as devotion to Kobo Daishi, major Buddhist figures, and a miracle story that were historically important in shaping the pilgrimage growth. Instead, to circumvent this issue of religious favoritism, the regional Hime government made strategic decisions to focus solely on the concepts of pilgrimage culture as a central theme of their proposals. Meanwhile, as readers and church shows, many contemporary pilgrims, especially retirees, approach this pilgrimage as a hobby or health activity. Some do multiple circuits by car, making the pilgrimage a central organizing principle of their retirement year without necessarily engaging with the religious aspects. The Shikoku and some conversation finally on the education. So I argue this kind of the secularization and the nationalization has broadly reflected in the local education in Shikoku as well. As I described before, regional, national, public, and private entities actively shaped and promoted the Shikoku, less as a religious practice and more as a key marker of Japan's cultural authenticity and heritage. And as I argue, these patterns extend to local education as well. The local universities in the region celebrate this Shikoku pilgrimage as a pride of local culture and actively incorporate it into their curriculum. In the case of Imabari Meitoku Junior College, its common course regional culture theory features an extensive students' engagement with the pilgrimage where students are encouraged to take part in pilgrimage to learn about their osetai and their local cultures. Additionally, we see this educational engagement in how students of Kagawa University Education Department teach Shikoku culture to local students. These are just a few examples of many that I draw from based on my digital archive. But what it really stands out here, however, is that almost all of these educational activities are framed as cultural activities, and any religious elements and religious elements only appear when discussing the origins of the pilgrimage, and it disappears in the main bodies. So to confirm this patterns is not just isolated in the education field, I analyzed 3 academic articles published in Japanese. I analyzed relevant article that deals with the incorporating the Shikoku pilgrimage into their local education. The keyword emerged from these materials are as follows: real-world learning, regional culture, community engagement, local survey, and tourist promotion. And there's almost no indications or reference to these religious elements. Throughout these sources, the Shikoku pilgrimage is consistently identified and framed as a local practice, and any suggestions to religious connection is avoided at our cost. The word Buddhism appeared only twice in these 3 academic articles that I analyzed. And the terms was only briefly mentioned in the context of an Islamic student refusing to participate in the pilgrimage based grounded in his on the religious ground. While this the analysis draw from a relatively limited samples from digital archives, it aligns with the broader patterns of how Shikoku pilgrimage is treated in modern Japanese society as a cultural heritage rather than a religious practice. So finally, this is the conclusion part. How am I doing with my time? All right.
1 minute.
So in conclusion, the pilgrimage occupies a very ambivalent position in both in broader society and also in educational context. While celebrated as a national cultural heritage and a regional pride, its Buddhist foundation raises concern about the religious favoritism, both among the people in the government and also among the educators. As a result, many of the celebrations often systematically leaves out religious elements. My research showed that this cultural religious tension is also very, clearly manifested in education as well. Just like in a broader social narrative, religious elements are notably absent from the educational discourse, with local program framing the pilgrimage purely as cultural heritage with heavy emphasis on historical and regional significance. However, as both cultural and religious practice, the Shikoku, when talking about Shikoku Pilgrimage, there is a time that we have to talk about its religious significance in a broader religious education. Like I said at the beginning of my presentation, I don't have a training in the religious in the education background, but when teaching children about this cultural heritage that is a very significant the root in a religious traditions, I think the case of Shikoku raises some important points. How should we approach and ultimately to this discussion that I would like to continue here, like how much religion is too much religious in a teaching the culture heritage. I'm going to cut. Sorry about going a little bit over time, and then I'll look forward to more on this following discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hongmin, and thank you for respecting the time. You were
I did my best.
Just 1 minute over. So I just want to thank Hongmin for that. I think that was an excellent overview and posed already 2 or 3 questions. Again, in the posing of the questions, we're already I think reflecting on that. That's something that I'd like to explore. Just hopefully we'll get the time to do that. Okay, our next presentation is by Yanhua Zhou of China. Dr. Yanhua Zhou is currently a professor of art history at the Research Center for Visual Art in the Sichuan Fine Arts Institute in China. She's also affiliated as a professor for the Department of East Asia Studies at the University of Arizona in the US. Her research focuses on the issue of art and geographic politics of contemporary art in Asia, global, socially engaged art in a transnational context, effective infrastructural studies, and non-human agency in art. And I'm going to give the floor, and I'm going to start my timer.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joseph, for your introduction. And it's really my honor to be here. So today I'm going to present it's a part of the outcome of my global fellowship, but I know it's immaterial. I spent one month in Shenzhen this October to do my research on the art collective, which is called Handshake 302. It is a community art collective, and I stayed there. I stayed with them. I lived in their apartment, and I got some really good news to share. So today I'm going to talk about the title is Mapping Shenzhen, Handshake 302, and the art geographic education in migrant community. Actually, I do not have any background of education as Hongmin did, but I cannot see that because I'm still teaching. I'm teaching at the university, so I assume I should have some teaching experiences or experiences of education. So let's see. So before we start, I'm going to show you this image. It's about Shenzhen. So for anyone who have been to Shenzhen, probably you will be very familiar to which in the background, the skyscrapers. Shenzhen is one of the China's youngest cities, super developed and very market driven, and it's also also a very fast modernized city. But if we look at what's in the front, we will realize that wow, is that Shenzhen? Probably not. But I will tell you that's true. That's a part of the Shenzhen, and these areas actually is a very typical and a very important area of Shenzhen. These areas are called Chengzhongcun, which is urban villages. And actually, there are collections between the two areas. So the people who are working in the daytime in those skyscrapers, but they come back home in the evening to come back to the urban villages, and because they live there. Due to the lower construction cost and the relatively affordable rent, the urban village has become the housing option for many migrant workers or and the lower income groups in the city, and they reflect the unique residential culture and the social structure under the city's rapid development, and have become an important subject in the study of urbanization and migrant communities. So in this village, I hope, yeah, in these villages, it's very easy to find the buildings are like this. They are very narrow and it has a little space for people to pass by. And we call these buildings the handshake buildings. They are typically found in these urban villages. And the names refers to densely constructed residential buildings known for the narrow space and extremely close proximity. And the distance between the neighbor building is often so narrow so that the residents could literally reach out and shake hands through the windows. So this is how the name Handshake Building came from. Um, So the art collective Handshake 302, its name alludes to the dominant architectural typology. Founded in 2013 in Shenzhen, the Handshake 302 is a nonprofit organization and a community art collective located in one of the Shenzhen's most iconic urban village. We call that Baishizhou village, urban village. Committed to making art accessible to everyone interested, encouraging participation from people of all backgrounds. So this art collective aimed to employ city walks as a community art geographic education method to help migrants engage with the infrastructure, the local industry, the cultural heritage of this young city, Shenzhen. And also they draw attention to the ongoing demolishing and the redevelopment of these arrival areas. So in this research, I'm going to ask, I'm so sorry because I'm doing art history, so probably you will find a lot of images with a very limited text, but I will try my best to bring the text at the end of my presentation. So in this research, I'm going to ask, how does community art shape the identity of migrants in Shenzhen and make this city understand itself through a series of art geographic education practices? And what kind of pedagogy can it provide? And how do we rethink community engaged art through art geographic education? From the first day that the Handshake 302 moved into the Baishizhou urban village, so this art collective experienced with the city walk as a form. The art collective began the project Flesh and Bones with an eye to exploring the city's cultural geography. And subsequently, they launched the City Drifting, which is an app that could facilitate people to explore the city. And they also worked hard to bring as much attention as possible to Shenzhen's cultural heritage, history, and the development, and then all the things related to Shenzhen's human geography. Based on an in-depth research in the humanities and the geography of Shenzhen, the art collective soon launched another project, which is called the Urban Humanity Geography Walking Project, which contains a series of city walks and workshops, and the selects a space which include not only the very modern areas such as the downtown of Lanshan, but also the very traditional and historical old towns such as Shajing, the town from which is famous for its oyster oil. They aimed at encourage participants to explore the charm of different city spaces through participation, experience, and storytelling. They have explored over the dozens of areas and have earned high recognition from various sectors of society. They also initiate a program, which means launch for the single. So basically, the the single persons without with no families, they might they come from another cities. They come from another cities to Shenzhen and work there. So that's for them. In Chinese, we call it 单身狗, the single dog. So yeah, you know what I mean. So the lunch is about the single. So through cooking and eating together as a 302 art space, they share the opinion on relocation, vagrancy, housing cost, housing issues, and also the migrant intimacy and raising children issues in the cities they migrate, they worked in. Since 2020, the Handshake 302 has illustrated by the Nanshan Management Bureau of Shenzhen Ecology and Environment to collaborate closely with OCT Wetlands in hosting the annual event, which is called the Nanshan District Nature Art Season. And this initiative has pioneered an innovative model combining environmental and art education, which are very popular among schools, parents, and the children. So the kids the parents like it. So let's go to the theoretical part. I coined the term art geography as their community education method. So what does that mean? The art geography is an interdisciplinary field that explores the intersection of art and geography, examining how artistic practice and the spatial understanding shape each other. And it also involves studying how art can represent, interpret, and interact with the geographical space, places, landscapes, etc., and also the environmental and social dynamics with them. And this field not only considers how geographic factors influence the creation of art, but also how art practices can reshape the humans and non-human perception of a physical and social spaces. Actually, the theoretical sources, there are several theoretical processes. For example, like the behavior geography cognitive maps proposed by Kevin Lynch, and also human geography represented by Yves Tuan, and also the cultural criticism, which we are very familiar, Walter Benjamin's planning, Gildas Spor's psychogeography, and Deleuze's nomadology. Building on this theoretical foundation mentioned above, I introduced the affect into the special production practice of a community art and argue that such space are not only space of a power, but also affective space. That means a space of affect and emotions. Incorporating affect theory into a special production means prioritizing the body as the primary elements of a special intervention in which bodies and space have mutually possessed, sensed, and even tortured each other. I introduced the significant agential map for us to understand the community art education practice of Handshake 302. So what is a agential map? An agential map is neither a symbolic representation of a terrain, topography, resources, populations, as the conventional map does, nor a transcend lived experience or materiality, but coexist with them. And second, an agential map is a secular, quotidian, and action-oriented, as Nigel Thrift mentioned, advocates in his long representational term in 21st century human geography. So it focuses on the mundane practices that shape human behavior with a specific context by considering meanings as a thought in action. And third, a gesture map is definitely effective. This is how we use the community art practice to create a gesture map. I argue that artistic intervention represents the intensive movement between bodies and the space. If we map the connection between body as a gesture map, we see not only the distribution of a power within the space, but also a distribution um, of affective sovereignty. So, what is the affective sovereignty? This I also pointed her. In her discussion of a slow death, Norman Berland offers effective recognition of sovereignty. She critiqued theories such as Carl Schmitt, Georgia Gambin, etc., for framing the sovereignty as a both condition and an obstacle to justice, and advocates that this approach broadly projects sovereignty onto decision-making events and construct a human harness based on grand and performative assumption. What Berlin focuses on is actually how political practices like sovereignty manifest in a daily experience of an individual. As she claims, sovereignty is a fantasy of the security and efficacy such a position might provide. So I refer to Berlin's notion of sovereignty as effective sovereignty, because unlike Berlin, I do not want to emphasize a conceptualized dimension of emotions, but I want to focus on the sensorial aspect of the body in our interpretation of sovereignty. So sovereignty, for me, effective sovereignty means sovereignty in the daily experience of individuals, and it's also the fantasy of a security and efficacy that such a position might provide. And also the power exercised by individuals through their perceptions and sensations of everyday environments and events, and fundamentally being a form of the body intensive movement. I argue that the Handshake 302 demonstrate how artistic interventions spatially distribute effective sovereignty through the mapping trajectory. This trajectory also connects various locations, turning in different spaces into meaningful places by highlighting the agency of a map. Having said that, because first, in each project consists of a series of events that is in mobile space. And second, it embodies sensorial experiences. And the third, map plays a crucial role in this project. I know I'm running out of time, but so I do not have much time to get into the details, but here is an advertisement. Tomorrow, I will lead in a workshop in the room 604, and the title is Teaching Ethnography by Walking Pedagogy in Action. So you're very welcome to join us. And in this workshop, I will go to the detail of how our bodies, what our bodies can do in our ethnography. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you both for your cooperation on the time. I have in front of me 4 questions that and these are listed as the main questions proposed by the fellows. And in actual fact, during this panel, I was discussing whether these were questions that were addressed within their presentations or questions that they wished to have posed. I'm going to do something slightly different. Regardless of what they want, I'm going to state these 4 questions because, for interest of time, I'd like to leave 15 minutes for us to discuss. I'm going to state these 4 questions as provocations and leave them with you, and then also leave them perhaps for you to think about afterwards and discuss maybe together in the spaces we have outside of this. Those questions are, and please reflect yourself because I think they're very interesting ones. How do community engagement and educational initiatives reinforce cultural preservation and transformation in East Asia? How do community engagement and educational initiatives reinforce cultural preservation and transformation in East Asia? The second one, how can regional and national authorities leverage educational programs to address issues related to cultural heritage? How can regional and national authorities leverage educational programs to address issues related to cultural heritage? Number three, what can contemporary art do in community engagement in East Asia, and what kinds of pedagogy can it provide? What can contemporary art do in community engagement in East Asia, and what kinds of pedagogy can it provide? And number four, how do we rethink education in East Asia through engaging in a local community? How do we rethink education in East Asia through engaging in a local community? These are provocations as much for us, as much as they might be for IAFOR, as they are for you, because one of the things I think is very important is that after the conference, you take some of these questions back into your institutions, into your places of work. We have 15 minutes, so I'd like to open the floor to any questions, because this I think is a good opportunity for our fellows to hear from the IAFOR membership and for you to hear from our fellows. So do we have any questions? Otherwise, I have plenty of my own. Any questions? There's one over there, and then there's a gentleman, hand raised there.
The gentleman that did the very first one, one of the things that I learned in education is that when you're trying to involve the community, sometimes you're knocking at the doors of the education institution, and it depends who you do that with. You know, sometimes you're hoping that they will welcome that community, that they will want to be part of this. And just recently at our school district, we started doing gardening at the elementary schools. But when we finally implemented it, the gentleman that was really spearheading said, I've been knocking at doors for 5 years. And every time I keep coming, they keep telling me next year and next year and next year. How did you get that encouragement to go into the community and do the study that you're doing? What doors did you knock on, and who said yes to you that you were able to do this?
Excellent question.
Thank you so much for the question. So as I briefly talk at the beginning of my presentation, at the beginning when I started this fellowship, so my focus was more on the issue of the aging and depopulation in Japan, and possibly evolving a gender dynamic that is happening within the Buddhist institutions. So I actually didn't see this research will be happening. This is one of the serendipitous the step that I far into. So for this particular, so my main body of research will be coming next May at the conference on the Asian Studies in Arts and Humanity. In fact, which will happen right here in this hotel. So that's where I'll be presenting my main one. So for this particular research, my the work has been largely based on the digital archives and digital archives. So I talked to like two abbot at one of at the temple one of the 88 temples in the Shikoku regions, and I was able to have some conversations on like how frequently does the school trips happen to these temples, and like what do they talk about, or how does it usually happen. So I got some general ideas of how the field trips works, and how the community takes the regional community takes this pilgrimage culture very seriously. But I regret that I didn't have much chance to speak with one of these participants, or the local, most importantly, local people who are actually who actually live there, and it doesn't have any conflict of interest in this, any sort of this conflict of interest in this religious setting. So sorry that I cannot answer the questions for now, but hopefully my more trip to Tokushima will find more about this later.
Question there.
Thank you for both of your presentations, both very interesting. If it's okay, I have sort of one question for each of you. So on the first presentation, what kind of efforts is the religious community itself, as in the temples itself, making to kind of reinsert religion into secular practices? Does it try to, for instance, have a say in the UNESCO heritage applications and so on? For the second presentation,
Can we just answer that, because
Yeah.
my brain won't be able
Sure.
to
sure.
deal with a few questions at once.
All right. Thank you so much for the question. So based on what I read and based on what I've seen so far, the voice of the religious community is surprisingly excluded or absent in the regional effort to promote the Shikoku Pilgrimage as one of their UNESCO as to bring up into UNESCO recognition. Based on the conversation that I had with the temple community there, some of them were unhappy, and then in fact, some of them were quietly resisting that their temple will be recognized will be recognized as a religious UNESCO heritage, because then it's going to bring a lot of regulations to the temple, and it's going to limit their flexibilities of how they operate, how they run their the temples. So there's mixed feelings about it, and definitely the big feeling that they have is their voice is largely excluded, but then they don't have much to say to the regional government, because because then it becomes really thorny issue, right? This regional and national governments are paying tax monies to promote this pilgrimage, promote this into the international presence, and bringing religion too much could actually bring this issue of religious favoritism, not just Shingon-shu, the school of Buddhism, but Buddhism in general. And as much as Buddhism still has a strong presence in Japanese society, a lot of Japanese don't want to see that. And it could potentially bring legal challenges. So I think they're very hesitant to. That's actually one of the reasons why they're so hesitant to raise their voice.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On the second presentation, as these handshake building communities go through processes of modernization, what kind of efforts do you anticipate to preserve the art heritage that they've created?
Thank you so much for this question. I think that's kind of a kind of a very thoughtful, provoking for me to think more about how the contemporary art could relate itself to the cultural heritage, right? Because it seems that there are separately, definitely separate the two things, but actually they're not. For example, there is a city walk project, which I mentioned, it is a flesh and bones. So the cultural heritage and the historical old towns is one of the walking places. So basically, the artists just they organize a group. They invite the participants. Their participants just ordinary people. There are some of them are just the middle class, and some of them is just basically simply working in the city of Shenzhen, and they are all outsiders, because we're very hard today in Shenzhen. We're very hard to find the local Shenzhen people, and there is a saying means if you come to Shenzhen, you are Shenzhener. So we thought that Shenzhen is a very young city without any cultural heritage or history. But actually, the artists organize their group, their work in this cultural heritage, work in the old towns. For example, like old town I mentioned is Shajing. It is a old town. It is I think the very oldest town, famous for its oyster oil industry. So yeah, I think I hopefully answer your question.
Any other questions? Can I see any hands? There's a hand there. Ready to go? Thank you. My question is, I mean, both the presentations were very good, informative. Certainly a new area of interest to me. With that, my question is to the first presenter.
you mentioned that the pilgrimage is very popular. I was thinking if you also thought about why people in the first place go on to the pilgrimage. Were they driven by the knowledge about the pilgrimage site, or were they driven by, for example, the information that they share with their friends, like a kind of herd mentality? No. So, do you have something on this? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. Just to clarify one thing, did you say like white people or white clothes people? Can you clarify which one was it?
Okay. I will rephrase my question. Sorry for not being very clear. You mentioned that the pilgrimage is very popular, and it's only going to be very popular again with the policy of the government focusing on the pilgrimage as a means of moving or unifying people around. And my question about this question is that do you also have some kind of information about why people go on to pilgrimage?
Oh, sorry.
Do they go because
why?
do they go because they have they really want to have the blessing of the site, or do they go as a tourist just to see around, move around? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for your questions again, and my apology for the confusion. I thought you said the white people. So that's a really important question because traditionally pilgrimage was only for people this religious ascetic. That's how it got started. So it was really for people who are highly devoted to the Buddhism and search for enlightenment. But what's been happening since in the modern time is that it has gradually transformed into something more than just religious pursuit. In fact, if you go to the Shikoku Pilgrimage, the official website, among the things that they were saying, why do people go to pilgrimage? They would say, oh, it's because they want to find about themselves. They want to gain health through this walking, or they want to experience what's real Japan, or what's real traditional Japan. And like one of the last thing that they talk about, and very, very rarely people walk to find enlightenment. So that's how it is being framed in recent times. So yes, people still do go to on the Shikoku pilgrimage in search for some religious meanings or possibly the enlightenment, but that surprisingly happens. That doesn't happen very frequently. Most other pilgrimages they do go there because they want to experience something that only Shikoku pilgrimage can offer. So it really became more of a tourist the site than a religious site. Is basically what my presentation was trying to convey. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, well, I just like to pick up myself then of if you have a dinner party, you're not meant to discuss religion or politics. That's if you want to keep peace around a table. And I think one of the things is that art is it's a highly political sort of act, and so I wondered if you might and the same obviously the intersection between religion and politics. The reason, of course, that Japan has a constitution which it didn't sort of it's quite an interesting part of history that Japan didn't emancipate itself, if you like. Japan became emancipated through colonization or through the American occupation. So the constitution it has, which is in actual fact a strange sort of form of a Philippine constitution, in fact, is one that keeps things resolutely secular. And when we've had discussions, when we've organized events with the Prime Minister's office and the Cabinet office, and when we wanted to put religion on the menu, a cabinet secretary came and went with a red pen and said, "No, you're not to discuss that." But we were able to do it. But we had the panel on culture instead. So I think my question it actually goes to both of you. But my question for Yanhua is the role of community art and the role of in how that intersects with migrants in what's a very politically charged space. Perhaps you can speak to that.
No,
Okay. Okay. Thank you for this question. So if we think about politics, political issues, the migrant workers probably would be a very political issues because they are like minorities in the cities, underrepresented. The situation in Beijing, which is another project I'm doing, is also is more, I think, more severe. They I think that some of you might know that the eviction, the incident of eviction, the low people. What is low people? In Chinese, we call that 低端人口. So they like classify the people high, middle, and the low. And the low people, they are migrant workers. They are from different areas. They're from rural areas of China, and then they come to Beijing to be the construction workers, to be the housekeepers, etc. So they live in the area we call that Pichun. This is another project. I think that will be more political. And this Pichun is in a suburban village in just like 30 kilometers, 30, yeah, okay. I, yeah, from Beijing. So I think that could be a kind of example showing the how the community art could relate to the political issues for migrant workers, because there is a project in Beijing called the Pichun, the new workers art trope, which I'm also working on. But for my project in Shenzhen, it's more mild. Sorry, I need to keep doing this because I need to clarify it. Yeah, in Shenzhen, that's more mild. There are very little political confrontation. I mean, less confrontation than in Beijing, because Beijing is a capital city. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And Hongmin, we don't have time, unfortunately. That's I don't control time, much as I'd like to. I found this fascinating. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for being Global Fellows.
Thank you.